to hit that like and subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so that you never miss an episode. With that, let's get started. So, last time we talked about how Harper and how Harper confronted Jack about how they had never visited the house in the woods. So that's what Jack and his men decided to do next. They decided to visit the house in the woods. So let's not forget how dirty it was 23 years ago, and it was abandoned 23 years ago. So he can only imagine what it looks like now. And obviously, when they get there, all they see is a small white wooden house covered with ivy and small shrubs. It has a barn-like door, and its roof has like little trees growing up from it. So it definitely looks a little dirty and old. Um okay, so they break into the house obviously, and when they get inside, they see um a man, a scruffy man specifically, sitting inside the house. Um So they walk up to this man and they ask him who he is. And so the scruffy little man says that his name is Dean. And then they and then he says that he has been living there for 23 years. And at this point, Jack is ultimately shocked that he is standing in front of what he believes to be Dean. And turns out it is Dean. He tells so Dean tells Jack and his three colleagues that Zach guards the door at night and Aiden guards the door during the day, and he has brought 3 meals a day by Bethany. um so obviously they're like, wait, why are they bringing you meals? Like, why are they bringing you anything if they allegedly killed you? Um, so he says that the night he was killed, he played dead because he knew that his friends would leave him. Dean then decided that he wanted to stay in the woods, and he told his friends this when they came to bury him. Interestingly, they agreed because they all got some benefits from his disappearance. Um, and Dean is allowed to have so he has power, he gets food, and he has water. He's only allowed to use the power during the day, but as soon as it gets dark, it's supposed to go out. So,
Okay. So, after nearly 3 hours of talking with Dean, Jack and his men leave so they can talk about the suspects. After discussing the consequences of this, Jack ultimately decides to let them go as long as they inform the family of Dean and they convince him to come home. They tell Dean's mother first, and she's beyond shocked by the news and asks to see Dean the next day so she can truly believe that it's actually Dean and that it's not some made-up story. The friends tell his father and sisters next. They are happy to hear that he's okay, but don't understand why he would put them through all of the pain he did for all of these years. And then they decide to see him the next day. After convincing Dean, he goes to see his family, and ultimately he is happy to be home. He's really excited to be home. The next day, Jack packs up to leave for another job. Well done until next time.
so, um, so obviously we are very intrigued by like him staying, like Dean staying in the woods for 23 years. So um at this point, um he's a 29-year-old. So it's a little bit weird that he's staying in the woods in a small tiny abandoned house. Like, I'm saying that it looks like it's probably the house is probably a 12 by 12. So, I mean, very small. It's like the size of a room at the most. So so we are kind of wondering like what benefits they like all got. So obviously we know that Dean was popular, so obviously and Zach was jealous of the popularity. So Zach became more popular, which was a benefit to him. Dean was the smartest in his class, so he was like very smart, but Pedro was like second. So Pedro became the smartest. Um, uh, Aiden was a school bully. I mean, he um he kind of like I guess probably got like more popular, and I guess he was like now considered the strongest since Dean was gone. Avery, um, obviously she wanted to break Dean and Harper up, which is what happened. So I mean that worked out for her. It worked out for Bethany because Bethany and Dean kind of got together, and then Harper. It worked out for Harper because um, she realized that uh, she needed to move on, and like she could just blame the breakup on his disappearance, with not necessarily on Bethany. So like they all got some sort of benefit out of it.
I feel like, in a way, if she would have kept blaming Bethany for everything, that this case, well, probably would have ended up a lot like more rocky. Not, it was already rocky before, but I feel like if they didn't even go in this house and they didn't even look around, that Dean would still be missing. And this case would just have to be closed at the end of the day. Even though it was already closed, but Jack would have to like just leave it alone because he wasn't really finding much. He really only found two things, which were bracelets and the mat. And then when he tried to do a hearing with all the suspects, like they didn't even want to talk. So it was kind of like if and Bethany and Harper, they're kind of just gonna have to get over themselves. Because at the end, if they wouldn't have gotten over themselves, this case would be a lot rockier. Um, and honestly, I truly feel like Bethany kind of got in the way of Harper and Dean because she was kind of like acting a little weird, but then Harper made it worse by trying to get all over Bethany about all these things because of how she felt. But then again, like at least Dean was found, and the only way he was truly found was because Jack and his team decided to go in this house. And if they didn't, Dean would still be where he would still be where he was, but no one would know where he was unless they went in the house.
like Harper's hints really helped out.
Yeah.
So also like I mean, how hard was it to keep that secret? Because there are six of them that know, okay, and or seven of them technically, including Dean, but six of them are like out in the public, that out in the community every day. And Dean is like in an abandoned house in the middle of the woods. I mean, there are kids like that go through the woods a lot, so I wonder how he maneuvered that. Obviously, besides the lights rule that he followed. Um, Also, like it must have been a hard secret to keep. Like you probably would want to tell his parents at some point, like so that they don't have to like mourn their son, like the loss of their son, and like think he's dead or whatever. So like that's also like something like they should have probably told him about it. But
And in the first episode, we asked like if Dean was bitter about his parents' divorce. Um, as we know, with everything that we've collected and everything we've heard about, that he wasn't bitter about the divorce. It was more so that he was annoyed and bothered with what his friends were doing, and he was more, like we said previous, that he was like a splinter and he just didn't want to do anything, and then his friends just got sick of it, and so he acted like everything was fine, but nothing was really wrong with his parents. It was mainly just himself and his personality around people.
Yeah, so after being gone for 23 years, like adjusting to society seems a little bit hard because like 1987 they didn't even have like cell phones. At this point in 2000, you would probably have a flip phone. Um, uh, so 1987, the bag phone was like kind of there, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like that big chunky thing, like flip phones are like very small and compact, so like you can like carry it on the go essentially.
They didn't
So
really have communication ways, and
yeah.
even if they did have communication ways, in this case, if they had communication, they were able to call and text. They could easily file and get police reports of all the calls and texts from a phone if a phone was left behind, and see how they all connected to this case.
So obviously, society and technology and everything had um, evolved like over the years while Dean was missing. So
Yeah.
he had to obviously adjust to that. I mean, Dean was 16 when he went missing, and he's found at 29. So big difference of time,
Right.
essentially. Um. So uh. So yeah. So it just seems like crazy how like he doesn't have a high school diploma. Obviously, he has no college because like they didn't have like online schools or whatever that like they possibly could have had in 2000, but they have now in 2024. So like adjusting to society and adapting to it after that just seems really crazy.
And then I remember, because a bunch of people in the school also thought that it was a suicide attempt, but all of the evidence shows that it was more of a disappearance and it wasn't more of like a suicide attempt. Because if it was a suicide attempt, there wouldn't be a car found, and his body would have already been found. Because typically with suicidal attempts or even like murders, which the body's usually found during or a little bit after the timing. So, and a bunch of the evidence didn't really match up with it being a suicide attempt because they were at a party, and then everyone in his group started beating him, and then they took him. So there's no way he could have really had like a suicide attempt between that time because the whole group was always around him and with him, especially when they were taking him to that abandoned house. And he never ended up dead. Like he was found alive. So I feel like what they tried to do was cover it up because they had this plan set in stone, and they were like, "Oh well, we're just gonna cover this up, and we're gonna say it's a suicide attempt, and we're gonna have everyone question if because of how he was acting, because the way he was acting was due to friendships and was due to the way that he felt around the certain people, and he just acted like everything was fine. So everyone thought that due to his putting on that fake face that it could have been a suicide, but none of the evidence matched because they found a car, bracelets, and a map, and then they ended up finding Dean. So it wasn't a suicide attempt. It was more of like it was a disappearance. It was basically
Also, like Dean, obviously they like his friends had to like go set his car up because like literally like the day after um he went he was beaten, and the night after the party his parents informed the police like 1.5 days later. So obviously, they had to do all of that. So in conclusion, we obviously know that Jack is leaving New Springs, Connecticut.
Now that he found Dean.
Now that he's found Dean, so that's interesting. I guess he's going to go solve more cases. So
yeah, him and his crew.
All right. So with that, we're
That's the
gonna
end.
close out our last video. Bye bye.
Bye, guys.